Welcome, Ciel.
Hi.
Hi. I'm so excited to be chatting with you. I'm sure everyone's going to feel the energy and the momentum of the fact that we've been talking off camera for a little bit here and finding out that our worlds and vocabularies and interests are very interwoven and very connected. And so it's such an honor to be introducing you to the chronic illness community, the chronic wellness space that we're growing, and also full circle wellness tools. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's awesome.
So even with all this fun wordplay we've been having, I haven't yet heard your health journey and the journey that brought you to the place that you are now, and this deep wisdom and work that you're doing in the world around being a shamanic practitioner, around walking your walk in this conscious, illuminated, shamanic, and you say also somewhat Buddhist way. Would you be willing to share your story with us and tell us about that evolution?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a long process. It's definitely been a lifelong learning experience. I would say that I started having a lot of health problems when I was a kid. I was a really anxious child and really worried about my place in the world, basically. Like a deep sense of fear sort of reigned over my life for most of the time. And I guess it continued into being a teenager, super anxious, really depressed, into my 20s, a very externally focused existence. I was very much focused on what I looked like, where I lived, who I dated, what I drove, all of the things that, sort of drive conventional social standards and everything else. And the longer that I stayed in that, the more sick I got. And it started with stomach problems and anxiety and stuff like that, and then it moved into strange masses in my body and tumors and all sorts of stuff. And it's amazing how long you can go and not really listen, you're like, oh, no, I'm okay, or I'll push through. And you go through the route of pharmaceutical medications and thinking that that's the way that you're going to find some healing. And then I think it initially culminated when I was about 26 or 27. I was a really high-end bartender, makeup artist, making quite a bit of money, living a fairly high lifestyle. And I just had a breaking point, really depressed and sort of broke down. Went to Nepal for 3 months and just walked in the mountains for 30 days straight by myself, and ended up in strange places and had this massive exploration, and all my illnesses went away, everything within the space of 3 months. I just was like blown away by my capacity to heal, and I came back and became a yoga teacher and started studying all sorts of different medicines and stuff. And I'd originally planned on going to Western medical school. That had always been sort of my purpose, I thought, but once I started really getting into all of the other opportunities, the empowered healing opportunities that are out there in those perspectives, there's no going back. And then I encountered a few shamanic people who kept telling me that I was supposed to follow this path, and it just seemed so foreign to me. And I kept thinking, I'm not indigenous, only indigenous people are shamanic, and I could learn this, but it's never going to be a part of who I am. And then I ended up in San Francisco doing my master's at the California Institute of Integral Studies, and I got a master's in integrative healing there. And while I was in school, was approached by this woman who said, Spirit has told me that I'm supposed to teach you, and I don't want to teach you. I think you're a pain. And I was like, okay, I guess this is a strange relationship. And so I started studying with her, and I studied with her for about 5 years, and had amazing experiences and amazing challenges for sure. And in the course of that, ended up, I was in France doing an internship at a meditation center and got bit by a spider, actually, and contracted Lyme disease. And that was about 3 years ago. And I think I had taken on a sort of spiritual, how could I describe this? A arrogance of some sort at that point, a couple years into the practice, thinking I've got this all sorted out and everything is fantastic, and then was pretty blown apart again in a really massive way by Lyme disease. Got really, really sick, and yet again found some immense wisdom and experience and perspective from that only enhanced my practice and my understanding, as the shamanic path is that of the wounded healer, in that you cannot fully commiserate nor compassionately understand what anyone else is going through unless you've gone through it yourself. And you come out on the other side with it always reminds me of those bowls in Japanese culture, and I can't remember what they're called, but when you have the cracks and then they seal them with gold. To show you how, those wounds and those processes have actually been like the most fantastic things that could have possibly happened to you. And so, it blew me apart again, but then put me together in all the right ways. And I feel balanced and healthy and wonderful now, but I think that a big part of that is a relinquishment of that need for surety in the process, and this openness still that I'm still going through stuff, and we're always going through stuff, and maintaining that beginner's mind sort of perspective, even as I've moved into a more teaching role in my work and as a healer, but still saying, there's always possibilities for lessons and education. So it's been a nice trip. Really hard, but really nice.
Is that amazing? So how do you face the question we all hear of, are you healed? You've touched on it a little bit subtly there.
Yeah. It's been, you know what? I was actually having a conversation with a friend of mine last night about this, because I just started studying with a new teacher, and he's Haida from Haida Gwaii, north of here, and he's an amazing teacher. And recently I've had my heart broken quite intensely, and in a really, really fantastic way, learning a lot about my own shadow work and what kind of vulnerability I'm still holding on to. And in the course of this heartbreak and all the resulting stress and whatnot, ended up having Lyme symptoms again. And it's been a year and a half since I had anything related to that. And it was a really odd moment. I mean, I can't say that I went to a place of fear right away, but it was like, I thought I was kind of done with this, right? And so I think that going back to that idea of we're never done, the wellness is this ongoing practice, and that it's not a linear, you come out on the other side and you're good with this. And the way that I actually healed through Lyme disease was by looking at it as this miracle that had been presented to me as an opportunity to release impatience, to release arrogance, to further enhance and articulate my own creativity and my personal power. And so now when I get these symptoms back, and which I did this past while, my immediate reaction is, this is feedback. This is only intelligence. This is only my experience speaking back to me and saying, hey, Ciel, chances are you might not be going down the road that's going to lead to greater evolution and awareness and kindness, So let's step back, see where you're going with this. Where are you living in fear? Where are you being impatient? Where are you not expressing your creativity? And as soon as I go into those places that I know that this is meant to teach me, and I can understand the lessons and the possibility within them, all the symptoms go away. So it's diligence, though, because our inclination of a human brain is to go, I'm going off the path, and so it's that daily dedication to meditation and spiritual practice and just taking care of myself on all levels. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I've had this pondering myself, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, about when that I thought I was done with this thing comes up for so many. And when those cycles return of symptoms or something that reminds us, so often because we are also seekers, it propels us forward into seeking new territory of healing.
Yeah.
But there's a real beauty, especially I see in working with clients one-on-one, to also looking back to what worked last time. Where were you the last time you broke through to a new layer of healing? How do you yourself balance those two? That awareness of what it's showing you and how that calls us forward to seek, while also honoring that we may have relaxed or let go on practices that brought us to healing in the past.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It completely makes sense. And I would say that honestly, the longer that I go along the healing path and the longer that I do this work, the less I am seeking.
Mm-hmm.
Because seeking for me for many years was the sense of where I am right now is not okay.
Mm-hmm.
I need to be somewhere else, and then I will be okay. And that's that, living non-presently, as far as, especially in the healing process. The moment that things changed for me then, and the moment that things changed for me in every time that I have any sort of health or wellness sort of challenge, is in saying what is right now is perfect.
Right.
And there's some sort of peace in that of just saying, how can I derive the intelligence? And this is the basic premise of shamanic practice, is that there's no future thing that's going to solve something for you. All the wisdom you need is in this moment, and the more that we are, seeking, when I get here, then I'll be okay, the less of our own energies and possibilities do we have to actually devote to this moment of saying, you know what, I learned patience before, but you never are done, and that really speaks to our ego, and especially, as I mentioned, when you become a teacher or you take on a sort of different role of like, I should project this image of, somebody who's got everything sorted out, and you do, but my old teacher used to always say, the most important thing we always have to remember is that we came here as spiritual beings to have a physical and human experience because we want to experience our humanity. We are not trying to get to some place where we're perfect and we're, we never have anything happen and we never get sick and we never get sad and whatever. It's just like, if you understood fully what all the spiritual dimensions around us would do to feel sadness and to feel hunger and to feel attraction and love and all these things that we get to experience, they come part and parcel together. You can't have all the good without, the intensities and stuff. And so it's about really loving that human part of it and going, what can I learn today from this? How can I potentially grow and evolve in some beautiful way that doesn't involve me resisting this, what is. So
that's a perfect segue into another question I wanted to ask you, which is, what role has resistance played in your evolution towards continued well-being and wellness?
Personally derived resistance, or
how you begin to see resistance as an awareness tool in itself, and the way you describe that symptoms become a way that the body speaks to us, or our own journey speaks to us. Resistance is something that people think they just need to get rid of, and it's actually this incredibly beautiful gift we get. What we resist is often the very thing we need to lean into next. Have you experienced that with resistance?
Oh, absolutely. And I was, I'm a devout Pema Chodron reader and had for a long time, even prior to getting Lyme disease and stuff. She really was a great assistant through my whole healing from depression and stuff. Yeah. And she speaks to that exactly, is that we overcome the resistance to what is by allowing ourselves to really sit in what is. And that, especially when you are in so much pain. And right. Lyme disease, there was days where I couldn't actually make sentences and my face was paralyzed and it was horrible. And to sit in that and say, this is perfect at this single moment, this is exactly what I need to be experiencing. It's the most scary and insane and vulnerable thing that a human being can do, and it's that exactly that breaks down the neurotic ego that's like, no, we need to make this, controlled, and it needs to be a certain way, and this isn't the way that it should be, and so the combination of traversing a physical pain when you are chronically ill, plus a psychological and spiritual resistance to that immense vulnerability, it's huge, but as with anything, the amount of discomfort and the challenge within the circumstance is always equal to the payoff. Yes. And so, you sit in that pain and you go, I'm not going to run away from this right now. I'm not going to blame anybody. I'm not going to victimize myself. I'm not going to move. I'm not going to run away. I'm not going to numb. I'm not going to do any of those habitual reactions that we have to encountering pain. I'm going to sit here with this mindful abiding, compassionately, truly sitting with myself and going, this is my process, and this is my practice, and this life is giving me that. And I'm a Shambhala Buddhist practitioner, which is a tantric lineage, and the idea being that there is no need to seek wisdom from some external source or in some future experience or whatever. It is a shamanic perspective in saying life is giving you exactly what you need. You just got to sit still and listen long enough to actually tune into it. So.
Oh, absolutely. And you again highlight some pieces that are so important, at least in my lens, to healing. And it's in that what's right for you and knowing you and creating this space for you. One of our big objectives with creating the app suite that we've created is helping people distance themselves from what the book might say their diagnosis means, or what the doctor might be saying their diagnosis means, and instead really gain some reflections on how they are experiencing it. And in doing so, you can sit in the space of being in what truly is, and from there determine what your body is asking for going forward. And I know everyone, I encourage everyone watching to go to your website and experience the medicine just in the vibration of the website, but also the words. And you touch briefly on what sounds like your belief system as well, that each person's journey is very specialized and very unique to them. Could you touch in a little bit on that piece, on how it's so unique a journey for each of us to find our way back out? There isn't any necessarily one way.
No, and that, I mean, that's the premise of shamanic healing, is that we get sick because our soul is sick, because and we are doing things that are not in alignment with our truth, you know. And you had described your own process and path, and I described mine as well, where you're not in alignment and you get those illnesses, you know. That there is this benevolent quality to the universal force and the process that each person is engaged in that is moving them towards greater awareness if they choose that. I mean, that quote that I gave you guys, that really turned everything around to me, from Albert Einstein, this idea that either everything is a miracle or nothing is. You can't live, you know, with a kind of medium perspective on that belief system of saying, either I'm going to see this as my path and there's a perfection in it, and in that I have to own it as an individual. The comparison contrast model of saying, well, that worked for this person and that worked for this, that can be helpful, but it often, it continually sort of victimizes us, especially when we're recovering from chronic wellness, because then we think, well, that person got over it doing that, and it's not working for me, you know, and it again depletes our own ability to be with our own process at this moment and say, okay, so where's my feedback coming from, and how can I greater expand on, you know, what it is that I'm gaining from this and my experience. So it's, I have quite a few clients over in Europe and who have Lyme disease, and lots in the States and stuff. And often people, the first appointment that I'll have with them is them saying, okay, so, you know, just tell me what you did. Like, just tell me how, you know, what did you take and how long did you take it for? And they want a prescription, because that is the way that our conventional society works. Is the idea is that intelligence comes from outside of you. I mean, you look at our education systems, you know, kids go to school and it's that blank slate kind of perspective of, well, you don't know anything, and we're going to give you information, and then you're going to be smart. You know, you're going to have this intelligence. Versus, what are you knowing? Where is your wisdom coming from? And so, tuning people back into that, there's a great resistance in all of us, because then we can't victimize ourselves. When we own our own internal intelligence, you can't say, well, that person told me to do it, you know, so it's not my fault. It's a big step, but it's also the only necessary step to actually regaining your personal power, to saying, you know what, my life is mine to make of it. I am the creator of this experience. And so that's how I think disease really, if it turns into a true healing process, it always will bring back someone to their soul process and their soul's language in that capacity.
Feels like heaven to hear you say that. Wow. So I always like to ask at the end of these interviews, if someone is feeling lost, or they don't quite know where to start, or if all of this sounds great, but as you mentioned, they are in the reality of either feeling like they're in a really tough place, or it's very uncomfortable where they're sitting, what is one thing that anybody can do to begin to open up this process for them?
Yeah, and it was interesting, the questions you asked, and I wrote meditation down there, and then, you know, I was rethinking it, because quite honestly, I mean, the days when my head was full of ammonia or acetaldehyde, and when I had Lyme and stuff, I mean, meditation was so far out there that it was not even possible. But I do know that at any point, any of us can choose to focus on things that we are grateful for.
Yes.
And that shift of deliberately placing your mind on things that you have already been given, and we all know there's always something to be grateful for.
Yeah.
I mean, it shifts not only your spiritual perspective, but it does start to realign the physiological components of your brain in saying, okay, this person wants to focus on the good in the world, and then they'll naturally see more good, you know, because the brain will start to seek it out, that reticular activating system, it's called, you know, of like training. That mental training is the key, because so long as any of us, whether we have chronic illness or it's just something that's, you know, discomfort in our life, if we are focusing on what's wrong, it never can get better. It's not possible. But as soon as, I mean, you can, as benign or trite as saying, I'm grateful for sunshine, you know, and butterflies or something. It doesn't even matter. And my teacher used to get me to do pages every single morning. She'd just say, write out the same thing. It does not matter what it is that you're writing. It's that you are moving into that heart-centered place of saying, it is a gift to be here, even in that moment. And again, if you're sick and you can do that, the payoff is like exponential. So
I love it. Yep, you know my absolute love and adoration for the practice of gratitude. So that just is music to my ears. Thank you so much. And thank you for taking the time to meet with us today. I know you have a very busy schedule. It's just been an honor to be, kitchen to kitchen, room to room with you. And I look forward to many conversations ahead.
Me too. It's so nice to meet you. It's lovely.
Me too. Take care.
Yeah. Bye.